At the northern border of the Kuss Kingdom, an army was positioned. This force was commanded by Duke Ellen, the lord of the northern frontier. Gazing at the battlefield, Ellen murmured, "Unbelievable." Before him were countless zombies. He noted the number of undead was beyond comprehension, and a terrifying poison mist was spreading. A soldier approached him and said, "Duke, look over there." When Ellen turned his head, he froze. In front of him stood the undead knight Durian. Not even 10 high-ranking knights fighting together could guarantee a victory against him. Durian was seated on a horse, holding his own severed head in one hand. The soldier advised, "Duke, with our current forces we cannot win. We should fall back and prepare for a siege." Ellen gritted his teeth and replied, "Damn it, we cannot. The northern wall has already fallen. If the city gate also breaks, then the nation is finished." Ellen shouted that regardless of the sacrifice, they had to hold the enemy back that day. But then his eyes widened in shock. He witnessed someone charging recklessly straight into the horde. The soldier identified him. "My lord, Urin Rocks, sent here from the southern market of rocks." The young man was the protagonist, Urin, charging alone toward the massive army of undead. He was heading directly for Durian at a frightening speed. The soldier whispered, "The one who fights with daggers." But against Durian, daggers were useless. There was no way small blades could kill him. It was impossible. However, they forgot who was fighting. It was Urin. Urin's daggers flashed. He struck Durian's eye with lethal precision. Durian let out a terrible cry as his body began to melt. Ellen stared in disbelief. The soldier yelled, "Durian is melting away! How is that possible?" Urin had accomplished the impossible. He was killing zombies with daggers. The fearsome undead were dissolving in a single strike. People started whispering, "Could he be a saint sent by the heavens?" But Urin only sneered in his mind. "A saint? Don't make me laugh." Instead, a strange system notification materialized before his eyes. It read, "Experience gained." His fireborne mountain skill had reached level 1. It was a poison that could melt even undead marrow. His experience continued to rise. His 10,000 poison absorption technique activated, siphoning the toxins. His 4 heavenly venom arts also increased in experience. His fireborne mountain level grew even more. Urin smirked and thought, "Anything useful for the body? Of course, I will take it all for myself." But then the narrative jumped back 6 months earlier. A boy suddenly woke up in shock. He looked around and yelled, "What the hell? Where am I?" A voice said, "You are awake, young master." The boy turned his head and was stunned. Before him stood a beautiful girl with a sword at her waist, her clothes looking strange and old-fashioned. She asked him, "Do you feel all right?" He said, "Well," and before he could finish, she said, "I will call the priest right away." The boy quickly said, "Wait, excuse me, I just wanted to ask something." But she had already departed. He looked around and muttered, "Where the hell am I?" Then he saw a mirror and gasped in horror. His body was fat. He shouted, "No way! What is this?" Where was his original handsome middle-aged self? Why did he now look like a chubby brat? He pinched his cheeks, thinking this might be a dream. If he just went back to sleep, perhaps he would wake up. Soon the door opened. An old man walked in, and behind him was a huge figure. The old man said, "Young master, please give me your hand." But the large man sneered and said, "The disgrace of the household has finally woken up." Urin stared in fear, wondering who this intimidating old man was. But the old man quickly interjected, "The young master has only just woken up. Save the punishment for later." The large man looked at Urin again and said, "For someone who fainted, you seem fine. Your mind is stable and most of your injuries are healed." A physician standing nearby nodded and said, "It is a relief." But the large man snorted that it would have been better if he had died. He yelled, "Assaulting your fiancée, you beastly bastard! You are 19 years old already. Isn't it time you grew up? Even your younger brother has already opened his aura, and you, the eldest, only grow fatter day by day. You have not even reached 3rd aura." Yurin was confused, not understanding. The large man continued, "Once you recover, go to her and apologize properly." Yurin asked, "Her?" The man roared, "Your fiancée. If she does not forgive you, you are finished." He demanded, "Do you understand?" Yurin quickly said, "Yes, sir." The large man growled in anger, "Do not disgrace the Rox family any further." Yurin whispered, "So I am Yurin Rox. Then you must be," he gasped and said, "No way! The Marquis Willington Rox?" The man turned around with fury. He shouted, "Willington, brat! How dare you call your father's name to his face?" He slapped Yurin hard across the face. Yurin fell back onto the bed in pain. The priest and a knight rushed to stop him. The priest begged, "Marcus, please calm down." Marcus shouted, "Damn rash!" Yurin groaned and thought, "This cannot be happening. This had to be a dream." Later, he woke up again and gasped. He whispered, "Why am I not waking up from this dream?" The young woman entered again. She said, "You are awake." He asked for her name. She said, "Aaron." Yurin's eyes widened. It really was Aaron. He held her hand tightly, surprising her. He asked, "So the reason I am lying here is because I went after Ela, got beaten up, and passed out?" Aaron shook her head and asked, "Why are you suddenly speaking so formally?" He pressed her again. "So I got knocked out by Ela, right?" She finally nodded and said, "Yes, you attacked Lady Ilya and she beat you senseless until you fainted." He thought, "Damn it, I am screwed." It was clear now. He had somehow ended up inside the web novel he had written himself, but not as the protagonist. He had become the trash villain, the one who picks a fight with the hero and dies miserably. Yurin groaned, "This cannot be happening." The knight in the room asked, "Young master?" But Yurin only shook his head in disbelief. He muttered, "No way. This is not even a webtoon." Aaron tilted her head in confusion. She asked, "A webtoon?" Yurin thought to himself that he had possessed Yurin Rox. And to put it simply, Yurin Rox was a total scumbag. No talent, no skill, no training. He only leached off his family name as the heir. In the original story, he lost his fiancée to the protagonist. In his anger, he attacked the hero, only to be beaten down and killed in a back alley. Yurin bit his lip and thought, "In a world this uncertain, how am I supposed to survive?" This was a fantasy world, but he had no idea what abilities this Yurin had. Still, he at least remembered all the chances and hidden items the protagonist had not yet found. He needed to prepare fast. He pushed himself off the bed. His body felt heavy with fat. Aaron rushed forward and asked, "Are you all right?" He grumbled, "Not even close." She told him, "You should still be resting." Yurin ignored her and frowned. Suddenly, he saw something glowing. A status window appeared beside her. He stared in awe. This was the famous status window. It showed her stats: Swift Sword level 2, Clear Mind level 1, Aura Adaptation level 1, and Affection. Aaron called out, "Young master?" But Yurin muttered, "No, I must have gone crazy for a second." He forced a smile and said, "I am fine now. Go take care of your task." She bowed and said, "Yes, sir." He then thought about the skills. Swift was good. Aaron herself had been set up as talented in the story. But what was Affection 0? He frowned. Affection? Was this a dating sim? Maybe it was because he had played too many dating sims before. The world building felt strange, but at least the affection was not negative. Considering Yurin's usual behavior, that was already a miracle. He turned to the mirror again and scowled. But then he saw something new. Another status window appeared. It showed his name as Yurin. His special condition was morbid obesity. His trait was Eye of Creator. It showed 4 heavenly venom arts, but locked. His sync rate with the system was 99.9%. Yurin froze. Among all the skills, one stood out: 4 heavenly venom arts. He remembered it clearly. It was from that wuxia webtoon he loved, the one with the hot heroine and poison martial arts. It was the art of hidden weapons and venom. Yurin laughed nervously. This world's lore was a strange mashup, but if he could really learn the 4 heavenly venom arts, that could be his ticket to survival. In a far-off land, the Sachan Tang clan was a name that appeared in Chinese tales. They were known as a prestigious sect that trained in poisons and silent assassinations. They used toxin-laced hidden weapons to kill their enemies without mercy. Yurin scratched his head and thought, why is the Sachan Tang clan here? This was supposed to be a medieval fantasy world. He worried, what if he could not unlock this ability? But then he smiled like a devil. At that moment, the scene shifted to the Marquis' chamber. A servant said, Marquis. The Marquis turned and said, has he gotten up? It was Aaron who answered, yes, he woke a little while ago. The Marquis asked, how does he look? Aaron said, he does not seem normal yet. He stumbled when he tried to stand, and his body was still weak. The Marquis nodded and asked about the priest. Priest Elio had said Yurin's wounds were not very deep. The Marquis frowned and said, really? But did you notice Yurin acting strange? He said, normally, if told to apologize to Ilya, Yurin would throw a fit, but this time he just said yes. The Marquis muttered, his personality could not have changed. He was probably just dazed. Tomorrow he would surely rage again and swear revenge on Ilya. But Aaron whispered that the young master would show a different side, step by step. The Marquis was shocked but stayed silent. He then said, even I, his father, have given up on him, yet you still believe in him. He sighed and said, I almost feel bad for you. How hard it must have been serving under him as his knight. Aaron thought to herself, no, my lord. She felt that today the young master had truly seemed different. It was hard to explain, but she believed it. Meanwhile, in Yurin's room, Aaron shouted in shock. She asked, what are you saying you will do? Yurin said he wanted to exercise a bit. He asked if there was a training hall. Aaron asked, do you mean the drill yard? Yurin said, yes, show me the way. She blinked and said, you want to train right now? He said, yes, what is the problem? Inside his mind, Yurin thought about the Eye of Creator. It let him view stats, but he did not know how to unlock abilities. Maybe it was because of his obesity. For now, he decided to exercise and find a way. He followed Aaron towards the training area. He looked around and thought, this mansion's garden was as big as several stadiums. He was already exhausted just walking. If he tried working out in his room, his fat would drag him back to bed. Home workouts were impossible. The servants stared at him in surprise. They whispered that Yurin Rocks, the disgraceful young master, was going to train. He checked their affinity scores. Almost everyone's was in the negative. Some were even minus 70 or 80. He sighed and thought, well, considering how awful Yurin used to be, it made sense. He huffed and puffed and asked, are we there yet? Aaron said, almost. This is the 3rd training hall. Most knights use the 1st and 2nd. Yurin suddenly froze. He said, someone is here. The affinity of that person with him was minus 91. It was filled with killing intent. The man stepped forward. His name was Rai, and his trait was pictured. Rai smirked and said, oh my, isn't this the young master? What brings you to the training hall? Yurin forced a smile and said, Briar. The knight sneered and said, what an honor that the master still remembers me. Yurin whispered to Aaron, asking what had happened between him and that man. Aaron looked surprised and said, do you not remember? Yurin shook his head. Aaron explained that years ago, when the Marquis forced Yurin to train, the furious young master had called over Rai. He had then scarred Rai's face while laughing. After that, the Marquis gave up on training Yurin. His eyes widened. He thought to himself, this Yurin really was hopeless trash. He then turned to Aaron and said, let us go back. Aaron was shocked, but Yurin said, is there another training hall? One I can use alone. She said there was a 4th hall, but it was far away and had poor facilities. It was almost just an empty field. Yurin smiled and said, perfect, let's go there. I will lose weight properly. Aaron nodded and said, "Very well, follow me." They reached the fourth training hall. Yurin was already tired, but he looked at the equipment. He remembered that the Sichuan Tong clan specialized in throwing knives and hidden weapons. He picked up a dart and threw it at the target board. It did not even reach. He clicked his tongue in annoyance. He muttered, "I thought I could unlock it." Then he quickly laughed and said, "I just threw it for fun." He told Aaron he should build stamina first. He said, "How about running laps around the hall?" He told her to train however she liked. Aaron was shocked by his words. She had never seen him like this. But Yurin started running, huffing and puffing. Aaron quietly watched and thought perhaps he truly could change. Later, Marcus heard about it. He asked in disbelief if Yurin actually went to the training grounds. Aaron nodded and said, yes, he even started working out. The Marcus frowned and said, strange, how long would that last? But 3 weeks later, the Marcus was stunned. Yurin had trained every single day without skipping once. He had lost much weight and his appearance had changed. The Marcus looked at him and thought, as expected of my son. Without the fat, he was actually handsome. Had he truly matured? Yurin stood before a mirror and thought, I have slimmed down a lot. But the Sichuan Tong clan trait still refused to unlock. He clenched his fists and thought, I will give it a month. If it does not unlock, I will just steal the fate of the protagonist. Just then, a servant entered with food. The servant said, Young master, I brought dinner. It was chicken and soup. Despite its simple name, it was a nutritious meal. It burned fat and built muscle. In the Rox family, it was a tradition to eat it after every training session. Yurin sighed and said, Chicken and soup again? Aaron raised an eyebrow and asked, Are you tired of it? Yurin said, Of course, I have eaten nothing else for 3 weeks straight. Aaron asked him what he truly wanted. Was it just to lose weight or to become a knight? Yurin answered, Of course, I want to be a knight. Aaron crossed her arms and said, In this territory, even the mighty Mare eats chicken and soup after training, so the young master should stop complaining and eat it. She scolded him harshly. Yurin groaned and said, Fine. He muttered, Live and learn. What kind of outdated custom is this? But he admitted it had helped him lose weight, so he endured. He ate it quietly, but then he froze. He thought, Today's chicken and soup tastes different. Suddenly, a system notification appeared before his eyes. It said, You have ingested poison. Yurin's eyes went wide. At that moment, the condition was satisfied. The Sichuan Tang clan trait unlocked. A message appeared. The trait, Sichuan Tang clan, has been unlocked. Marquis sat in his room, quietly observing his son with a thoughtful gaze. The boy before him seemed different now. After losing weight, he carried himself with a sharper air, and Marquis thought he looked far more handsome than before. His son had really grown up, and the sight stirred both pride and reflection within him. Just as he was lost in his thoughts, a knock came at the door. Marquis called for the visitor to come in, and the door opened to reveal his second wife, Kina. Kina entered gracefully, her expression calm but with a touch of curiosity in her eyes. She first asked him to bring them some tea, her tone soft but expectant. Then, noticing how intently he was staring out, she asked what had captured his attention so completely. Marquis replied that he had been admiring the beauty of the garden outside. The colors and life blooming in it seemed particularly striking that day. Kina smiled lightly and explained that she herself had been personally taking care of the garden with great attention. Marquis acknowledged her words with approval and told her that her gardening skills were truly admirable. But Kina did not linger on the topic. She shifted the conversation toward a far more serious matter. She asked him about choosing the heir, reminding him that he had mentioned it before. She stressed that it would be better to decide quickly since the issue had already been practically settled. Marquis, however, said that it might take a little more time. Kina was surprised at this hesitation and reminded him that he had promised to name Colin as the heir within this very month. Marquis nodded, admitting that had indeed been his original plan, but things had changed. He explained that their eldest son, Yurin, had recently come to his senses. If Yurin applied himself with dedication, then he could very well become a suitable successor. Kina admitted that she had also heard the same. She confessed that she had been worried about Yurin before, but she too was glad to hear that he seemed to have sobered up at last. Marquis agreed and said it was indeed surprising. The change had only come after Yurin had been smacked by his fiancée. Yet somehow that seemed to have awakened him. Kina asked what Marquis intended to do about the matter of the successor. Now, Marquis replied that it had only been 3 weeks since Yurin began training, and he needed to observe him a little longer. He promised, however, that if Yurin slipped back into his old ways, he would immediately grant the heir title to Colin instead. Kina accepted his words outwardly, though she did not hide her frustration. She said she would go to the bedroom first and urged him to finish his work quickly. As she walked away, she felt her anger growing, not at Marquis, but at Yurin. She muttered to herself in bitterness that Yurin would just have to wait and see what would happen. Meanwhile, in Yurin's own room, he was shocked by a discovery. He realized that the Suntong family's lock had been unlocked. This was no ordinary matter, because the Suntong were known to specialize in poison. The condition for unlocking their family power was to ingest poison. The thought unsettled him deeply. It seemed unbelievable. His gaze fell upon the chicken soup placed before him. At first he thought he could wait, but then he noticed there was more information below. Scrolling through the system window, he saw a new database update. It revealed that Hanum herb was present in the soup, a plant with the attribute of paralysis. He remembered that the Hanum herb was a medicinal plant carrying a mild toxin. In small amounts, it was harmless to adults, but its effects built up slowly over time until eventually it paralyzed and killed. Yurin was surprised that the system revealed such details so clearly. Just then, Aaron entered the room and asked why he was not eating. He quickly replied that he would eat it, but inside his mind his suspicions grew darker. He wondered who could have placed poison in his food. Normally he would not be killed by such things, so something had changed in the flow of events. He realized that something which should already have happened had not. Around this time, Colin was supposed to have been named heir. Perhaps the decision had been delayed because he, Yurin, had begun training. That would mean the poisoning attempt could have come from someone supporting Colin. Narrowing his eyes, Yurin picked up the soup and drank it while carefully monitoring the status window. It showed weak paralysis poison and that the unlock condition was met. He told Aaron that he had finished it all, remarking that it was delicious enough to bring him to tears. He then asked her to leave him alone for a while. Aaron nodded in understanding and wished him rest before leaving quietly. When she was gone, Yurin turned toward the middle of the room. He called forth the Suant tongue system to show itself. A window appeared displaying his details. It listed his name as Yurin, his status as overweight with mild poisoning and light muscle pain. His traits were Creator's Eye Level 1 and Suant Tong Family Synchronization Rate of 97.7%. Yurin marveled at how smart and efficient the interface seemed. He focused on the plus icon in the system, and a new window opened with 3 parts: poison, hidden weapons, and martial arts. 2 were locked, but 1 could be explored. He first examined the poison section. Weak paralysis poison was now unlocked. He saw that there were many more poisons to unlock, progressing up to level 30. The final one was labeled as the invisible ultimate poison. He realized he would need to unlock all the lower poisons step by step. It was clearly a level-up style unlocking system. The system also explained that to properly use poisons, an inner technique was necessary. He then checked martial arts, where he saw 4 available techniques: Dark Poison Art, Thunder Needle Art, 10,000 Venoms Divine Energy, and Basic Inner Technique. Only one could be chosen. For Yurin, the choice was easy. The 10,000 Venoms Divine Energy allowed mastery over both poison and hidden weapons. He immediately chose that technique. Knowledge of the art engraved itself into his mind, and he felt shocked at how real it was. Declaring it unbelievable, he quickly sat on his bed, took off his shirt, and began meditating. A strange flow stirred within his body. It was qi. He guided it carefully through his meridians and stored it within the dantian to build strength. The next morning, Yurin ended his cultivation session. He was amazed to find that the stories of people training all night without rest were true. He felt no tiredness at all. Instead, his body was filled with energy and his senses had grown sharper. He could feel the flow of qi all around him. Without even looking, he could count the birds outside his window. A warm energy rested within his dantian, and by circulating qi into his head, he discovered that his status window would open. He then sensed a familiar aura outside the door. Aaron entered and explained that she had come to wake him. She noticed the bedding was untouched and asked if he had slept. He replied casually that it had simply turned out that way. Aaron scolded him gently, saying it was not good and that he should rest. She reminded him that today was the 20th. Yurin said he would continue training anyway since he felt great. Aaron promised to prepare breakfast. As she left, she could not help but notice that his muscles had grown. Later, at the training ground, Yurin approached the weapon rack. He picked up a dagger and focused on the targets. To his surprise, a crosshair appeared before his vision, just like in a game. He tightened his grip on the dagger and threw it with focus. The blade flew straight and embedded itself directly in the center of the target. Yurin was shocked, but filled with happiness. Aaron, who had followed, was amazed as well. The system window confirmed his achievement. Yurin had mastered the Swent Tong family's hidden weapons. Aaron stood close to Yurin, her eyes fixed on him with a mixture of curiosity and disbelief. She asked what the Grand Duke had just done, her tone hesitant, as if she could not believe what she had witnessed. Yurin looked at her, his face showing genuine confusion. He admitted that he did not know either, but he suspected that it must be the results of his month-long training beginning to surface. His voice carried a mix of pride and uncertainty. Aaron, however, could not accept it so easily. She shook her head slowly, muttering under her breath that such a thing was impossible. To her, it felt unreal, and yet she could not deny that she had just seen it with her own eyes. In her thoughts, Aaron admitted that it was the first time she had ever seen Yurin so flustered. Normally, he carried himself with confidence or indifference, but now he seemed unsure of his own power. She pressed him again, asking softly if he wanted to try once more. Yurin nodded in agreement, determination rising in him. He reached out, picked up another dagger from the weapon rack, and held it tightly in his hand. Closing his eyes briefly, he tried to concentrate. He thought about the fiery inner energy that always seemed to rise from his lower abdomen whenever he threw something. That energy spread throughout his body, fueling his strength. This time, he wanted to put everything into one strike. He gathered all his strength, raised a dagger, and aimed carefully at the wooden target. His breathing steadied, and then with a swift motion, he threw it with even greater force than before. The dagger sliced through the air with astonishing speed, like a bolt of lightning. It struck the target with immense power, splitting the wooden board in half. The sharp crack echoed across the training ground. Aaron gasped loudly, her hand flying to her mouth. She pointed at the shattered board in shock, unable to comprehend the scene before her. Yurin's lips curved into a smile. Inwardly, he thought that the crosshair appearing in his vision was no different from using a cheat code in an FPS game. His mind wandered briefly to his past. He remembered the time when he played competitively at a PC cafe. Back then, he had even won a tournament in a game called Battle Attack. It felt strange to think that the skills of his old life somehow translated into this new reality. Aaron, still dazed, whispered to herself, wondering what on earth was happening to him. Yurin turned back to her, his expression calm, and asked if she could sense anything strange from him. She tilted her head thoughtfully, shaking it after a moment. She said she could not feel anything unusual. The only thing she noticed was that he had lost a significant amount of weight since yesterday. Aaron explained gently that because Yurin had been training every single day and surviving only on simple meals of chicken and soup, he had been losing weight steadily. But today, she said, the change seemed greater than usual, almost unnatural. Yurin was surprised inside, but he did not reveal it. He realized that Aaron could not sense the inner energy circulating within his body. This meant that only he could use it, and no one else in this world had the ability to detect or understand it. The thought filled him with excitement. He smiled faintly to himself, realizing that he had gained a truly extraordinary power. Yurin picked up another dagger, ready to continue. He decided that practice was the only way to master this ability. He threw dagger after dagger, each one striking the target with flawless precision. His accuracy grew sharper with every attempt. Finally, he threw a dagger with such speed and accuracy that it struck directly against the back of another dagger already embedded in the target. The two blades lined up perfectly, one on top of the other. Yorin whispered softly that it was perfect, satisfaction gleaming in his eyes. Aaron, astonished, asked if she could try too. Yorin smiled lightly and nodded his approval. She picked up a dagger with determination, aimed carefully at the board, and hurled it with all her strength. To her dismay, it missed completely. She bit her lip and tried again and again, throwing with more effort each time, but not once did she manage to hit the target. Yorin chuckled softly, teasing that at last there was something she could not do. Aaron frowned, frustration clear in her expression, while Yorin turned his focus inward. In his vision, the status window flickered with an update. It revealed that his memory unlock for the dagger technique was now complete. He now possessed the straight cut technique. He muttered in amazement that he could use it with any weapon. The idea thrilled him. Aaron clenched her fists tightly, unable to understand why none of it was working for her. But Yorin was already searching for another weapon to test. His eyes landed on a broken wooden sword lying on the ground nearby. He picked it up, its rough edges splintered, and turned to Aaron. He asked her to step aside. Though hesitant, she obeyed, retreating a step, but keeping her eyes fixed on him. Yorin lifted the broken sword, feeling a surge of inner energy coursing through his body, flowing into his arms. He inhaled deeply, then activated the straight cut technique. With a sudden, powerful motion, he hurled the broken sword at the target. The weapon flew like a missile charged with inner energy. It struck the target board so forcefully that the entire structure shattered apart, collapsing in fragments. Aaron gasped, her eyes wide, unable to believe what she had just witnessed. She whispered in disbelief, questioning what kind of power this could possibly be. Yurin only smiled faintly, brushing it off, and told her perhaps it was just the result of practice. Aaron shook her head firmly, insisting that such a thing was impossible. Yurin's expression grew serious. He looked at her calmly and said that he knew she reported all his activities to her father. Aaron flinched, startled that he had noticed. Yurin asked her for a favor, requesting that she keep this matter a secret for now. She hesitated, torn between duty and loyalty, but finally nodded. He assured her that he was still experimenting with many things, and promised that later he would explain everything to her directly. Though reluctant, Aaron agreed. That evening, as the sun set, the servants of the estate began retiring one by one, bidding each other good night as they left. Yurin observed them quietly, his eyes following their movements. His gaze settled on one servant in particular, Peru. He decided it was time to use his abilities. Activating the Creator's Eye, he focused on Peru. A window opened before him, displaying details of the servant's fate and abilities. It revealed that Peru possessed Poisonous Touch at level 1 and Agile Movement at level 1. His affinity was listed as neutral. Yurin narrowed his eyes. Poisonous Touch could only mean one thing: the ability to insert poison into food. That alone was proof enough for Yurin to suspect him. In his mind, Yurin confirmed that Peru was definitely the one. He decided it was time for a true test. Moving silently, he approached the unsuspecting servant. In his vision, an arrow floated, guiding him as he directed it straight at Peru. He activated the paralytic poison. Almost instantly, Peru clutched his stomach, his body trembling. He groaned in agony, crying out that he could no longer move. Yurin stood before him, watching with satisfaction. He whispered softly to himself that it was a success. Though he could not yet see the exact duration, he soon discovered that the paralysis lasted roughly 1 hour. Without hesitation, he grabbed Peru and dragged him away into the shadows. Later that night, Peru slowly regained his senses. His eyes fluttered open in confusion, his body weak but functional. The first thing he saw was Yurin standing over him, watching closely. Yurin spoke coldly, telling him to wake up. Peru trembled, his shock evident. Yurin leaned closer, his tone sharp and commanding, and asked if he knew who he was. He warned him in a chilling voice that if he valued his life, he should answer properly. Peru swallowed hard, fear tightening his throat. Then Yurin asked the question directly. Was he the one who had placed poison into the soup? Yurin sat in front of Peru, his gaze sharp and unwavering as he stared directly into the servant's eyes. The room felt heavy with silence, the kind that pressed against one's chest and made breathing difficult. Peru trembled under the weight of that stare, unable to look away. Yurin spoke in a low voice, calm yet filled with authority. He told Peru that if his answer was correct, he should blink once, but if it was wrong, he should blink twice. Peru hesitated for only a moment, before slowly blinking once. Yurin gave a faint nod, his suspicions confirmed. He then asked the next question, his tone cold and precise. He wanted to know who had poisoned his soup, and he said that it must have been Peru himself. Peru blinked once again. A small smile tugged at Yurin's lips. He leaned forward slightly and said that the poison used had been Hong-Young herb. At this, Peru's eyes widened in shock. His body stiffened, and after a brief pause, he blinked once more. Yurin's smile deepened faintly, the confirmation solidifying in his mind. He leaned closer, his dagger glinting in the dim light as he raised it slowly. The cold steel hovered dangerously near Peru's throat. His voice dropped lower, his words sharp enough to cut. He asked if the one who had given the order was the Marquis' wife, Kina. Peru immediately blinked twice. Yurin's expression shifted in surprise. His sharp tone returned as he warned Peru not to lie. He declared that he could see everything and would know the truth. Pressing the dagger closer against the trembling servant's skin, Yurin said that if Peru lied, his throat would feel the blade's mark. He asked again, this time changing the name, demanding to know if the order came from Madame Dina. Peru shook slightly, fear gripping him, but he still blinked twice. Yurin frowned, watching closely. He could tell that Peru was terrified, yet he did not sense deceit. His gut told him the man was not lying. He decided that the full truth could be uncovered later. For now, he had another plan in mind. Without warning, Yurin pulled out a small vial from within his robes. The liquid inside glimmered faintly. He forced Peru to drink it, holding his chin until he swallowed. Peru's eyes widened in terror, his throat convulsing as the liquid burned down. Yurin explained calmly that what he had given him was Pardic. He told him that from this moment onward, he had only 1 month left. If he failed to receive the antidote within that time, his organs would melt inside his body and he would die in agony. Peru trembled so violently he could hardly blink, his breath coming in shallow gasps. Yurin leaned back slowly. He then willed the paralytic poison inside Peru's body to fade away. The servant gasped suddenly, shocked at the return of sensation as his limbs obeyed him again. Yurin's voice rang sharp in the silence as he ordered Peru to speak aloud this time. With a trembling voice, Peru whispered a faint yes. Yurin asked again, pressing firmly, who had truly given the order. Peru hesitated for a long moment, fear battling against the truth. At last he admitted that it was none other than the knight captain, Carrick. Yurin's expression darkened instantly. He knew that name well. Carrick was Kina's older brother, the man who had risen to the position of knight captain only because of his sister's marriage to the Marquis. Rage and calculation flickered through Yurin's eyes as he realized his earlier deduction had not been wrong. Carrick and Kina were indeed connected in this scheme. But he also told himself that this revelation, while important, was not the most urgent matter at hand. He still needed more control, more leverage, and far more power. From his sleeve, Yurin drew out a sheet of paper filled with carefully written names of rare poisons. He handed it to Peru. The servant's eyes widened in shock as he scanned the page. He stammered, saying that these were all deadly, infamous poisons. Yurin's expression did not change, as he told him coldly that only a handful of people even knew these names. That meant Peru must have access to the black market to acquire them. He ordered him directly, "Take money from Carrick, use it to buy every single poison on that list, and bring them to him starting tomorrow night." Peru was stunned, his mouth dry. He dared to ask why Yurin needed so many poisons. Yurin's eyes narrowed, his voice cutting like ice as he replied that Peru did not have permission to ask questions. The servant flinched, lowering his head quickly. In a trembling whisper, he said that he understood. Yurin nodded once and told him he could go. But just as Peru turned to leave, Yurin's voice stopped him. He gave one more command. From now on, his soup must always contain plenty of hanyang herb. Peru's eyes widened in surprise, unable to understand why. But Yurin only laughed softly. Inwardly, Yurin thought that martial arts truly were incredible. He had fooled Peru with nothing more than dried leaves disguised as poison. But he also knew this was only the beginning. He had to quickly master the Suanong martial arts because a terrifying storm was approaching in the outside world. The very next night, Peru returned. His hands carried a small bundle carefully wrapped. He presented it to Yurin, saying he had brought the poisons and herbs he had already managed to gather. Yurin opened the bundle and examined each item carefully. As he looked them over, he calmly named them: Hongyang herb, Ecopia, and with vein leaf. Peru was struck speechless, shocked that Yurin recognized them instantly. He stuttered, saying that such rare poisons were not easily found together. Yurin smiled faintly, replying that this much was nothing for him. Through his mysterious status window, he could see everything clearly. He then asked Peru why he carried so many poisons when Hong herb alone could kill a man. Peru explained carefully that Hong herb worked slowly, and once the victim's body built resistance, its effect weakened. But if one mixed Ecopia or with vein leaf after symptoms had appeared, the poison would become stronger, more subtle, and far more deadly. Yurin nodded, impressed despite himself. He asked how Peru had come to learn all this. With a heavy voice, Peru revealed his past. He said he had been sold to the living family at the age of only 8 years old. There he was placed under the training of a poison master. At first, 20 children had been taken in to undergo the same training. But the methods were cruel. The poisons were real, the lessons merciless. One by one, the children perished. In the end, only Peru survived. Yurin listened in silence, understanding that such a brutal upbringing explained why Peru had such knowledge and skill. Children without a natural poison affinity could never endure such trials. But what caught Yurin's attention more than the story itself was the burning hatred he heard in Peru's voice when he spoke of the living family. That hatred could be used. Yurin thought quietly that this servant might yet become a very useful tool. He told Peru that he had done well for now and could leave. Peru bowed deeply, his voice soft as he said, "Thank you, master. May you have a peaceful night." Yurin watched him leave, then sat down alone in his chamber. He knew it was time to push forward. It was time to truly begin his cultivation. He closed his eyes, activated his 10,000 venoms divine energy, and raised it to 20%. One by one, he placed the poisonous herbs into his mouth. First was Hanyang herb, bitter and pungent. His divine body absorbed the poison completely. Next was Iopia, sharp and foul in taste. But again his divine body took it in. Then came with vein leaf, earthy and harsh. Once more his divine body absorbed it. His face twisted from the disgusting bitterness, but he endured. Suddenly, a system message appeared before his eyes. It warned, "Danger, breathing meditation required." Without hesitation, Yurin sat cross-legged on his bed, focusing all his will. He guided his inner energy, refining the poisons that now coursed through his veins. He told himself that this night would mark his advancement to level 2. Hours passed, the night fading slowly as he meditated in stillness. By the time morning light crept into the room, Erin entered to check on him. Her eyes widened in shock at the sight before her. Urin's body had transformed overnight. His muscles had grown firm, his frame filled with strength. She gasped aloud, asking what in the world had happened to him. Urin slowly opened his eyes. His 10,000 Venom's divine energy had advanced to stage 2. His system now revealed new skills: Little Dragon Step for movement and new poison arts, Delayed Toxin, Truth Serum, and Soul-Killing Smoke. Urin smiled faintly, confident in the immense power he had gained. His body tingled all over as if every nerve burned. Then a foul odor filled the room, heavy and suffocating. Erin wrinkled her nose instantly, stepping back with disgust. "What in the world is happening?" she demanded, covering her mouth with her sleeve. Her eyes widened further when she noticed a strange rod of steam rising from Urin's skin, carrying the unbearable stench. She groaned and shook her head. "What is that horrible smell?" Urin sighed, clearly embarrassed. He explained that when inner energy rose to a new level and martial arts advanced, the body expelled its impurities in large amounts. "In short," he admitted with a faint chuckle, "I stink." Erin's face twisted as she waved her hands rapidly. "Don't you dare open the window," she said sharply. "Go bathe immediately." Urin laughed softly and nodded. "As you command." Moments later, after washing away the filth, Urin stepped onto the training grounds. His body felt lighter, refreshed, yet his mind was sharper than ever. He smiled faintly to himself as he recalled the details of Sarong's footwork. The Tang family had been renowned for it, masters of speed, assassination, and evasion. He thought about his fortune with a sense of disbelief. This was the kind of martial art that usually only appeared in wuxia novels, and now it belonged to him. Even as he began copying the movements clumsily, he felt joy. Each stagger, each shift of his feet carried hidden excitement. Erin tilted her head, watching. "Why are you staggering like a drunk?" she asked, her brows furrowed in concern. "Are you unwell?" Urin chuckled. "My body is adjusting." She didn't look convinced. "Then at least relax your face a little. You look like you're suffering." But she continued, "Do you really plan to enter the training hall today? Many knights will be there. It might not be wise." He smiled calmly. "I only want to observe. I won't do anything reckless. Don't worry." Erin sighed, but finally nodded. Together they walked to the hall. Inside, the clang of swords and shouts of training filled the space. Knights moved in formation, sweat dripping down their brows. But when Erin entered, several paused. Their gazes shifted quickly toward the boy walking beside her. Whispering spread in waves. "Who's that? Too handsome for a servant." "Don't tell me, is that the great young lord?" "That's impossible," another scoffed. "A month ago, he was still a pig." The sneers continued, disbelief and ridicule mixed in their tones. Some muttered accusations of sorcery. Urin clenched his jaw. Though they whispered, his heightened inner energy let him hear every word. Anger simmered, but he remained outwardly calm. Erin, ignoring the murmurs, pointed at a trainee knight nearby. "Look there," she said softly. The boy was practicing with focused precision, his stances steady and his strikes sharp. "That's the foundation of swordsmanship. Watch him closely." Urin narrowed his eyes. He recognized the boy immediately. In the novel, he remembered this minor character would one day rise to become an ally of the protagonist. To see him here at this stage was fascinating. Perhaps this meeting could be useful later. But his attention shifted to 3 other knights standing off to the side. Their eyes were filled with hostility, their expressions foul. His system confirmed it. Their affection values toward him showed in negative numbers. Urin smirked faintly. Perfect targets for testing. He lifted his hand slightly, focusing on one knight. Silently, he activated prolonged poison. Almost instantly, the man groaned, clutching his stomach. His face twisted in pain as he collapsed to the floor. The others rushed forward. "What's wrong? Go to the toilet if you need." "It's not that," the knight gasped, writhing as the pain worsened. He rolled across the floor, groaning in agony. The hall erupted into chaos. Knights shouted for a priest, panic filling the air. But then, just as suddenly, the man stood up. His face had returned to normal, calm and composed. "The pain, it's gone," he muttered. The others stared in disbelief. "Are you playing with us?" one barked. They began arguing loudly, frustration mixing with confusion. Urine smiled quietly. The test had worked beautifully. Now it was time for the second. He activated soul-killing smoke. The air trembled faintly. In an instant, a horrifying illusion manifested before the three hostile knights. To them, a massive bull monster with glowing eyes charged forward. They screamed, stumbling back in fear. Aaron blinked in confusion. She saw nothing at all. "What's wrong with them?" she asked, baffled. Behind her, Urine grinned, unable to hide his amusement. The illusion shifted again. This time, a skeleton warrior emerged, holding a burning sword, its hollow eyes aflame. The knights cried out, swinging their blades wildly at empty air. Their strikes clashed against nothing, their fear mounting. Then the illusion faded as quickly as it had appeared. The three knights froze, gasping. One muttered, "What just happened?" Another pointed at his companion. You looked like a monster just now." The third shouted, "No, you were the demon." Paranoia gripped them as they accused each other, their faces pale and their swords trembling. Urine decided that was enough. He had seen the effects clearly. The skills were effective, and the chaos they created was perfect. He turned to Aaron. "Why are we leaving already?" "It's too noisy," he said simply. "The training hall will be better." Just as they stepped toward the exit, a maid ran up, bowing quickly. "Young master," she said breathlessly, "a guest has arrived to see you." Urine raised a brow. "Lady Elia Marquis." Aaron gasped softly. At that very moment, Elia herself appeared, elegant, proud, and carrying the grace of her noble house. She approached with cold eyes. Her voice was firm, her tone decisive. "I have come to annul the engagement," she declared. But then her gaze landed on Urine. Her steps faltered. Her words broke. Her eyes widened in disbelief. This was not the fat, clumsy young lord she remembered. The boy before her was sharp, tall, and striking, his figure exuding strength. He looked like an entirely different person. Urine walked forward calmly, closing the distance with quiet confidence. His eyes met hers, steady and direct. He spoke her name softly. Elia's heart skipped. When the maid informed Urine that a visitor had arrived, he assumed it was Elia Marquez, his fiancée known for her fighting prowess. He anticipated she had come for a visit. Around this period, Elia had begun requesting to end her engagement to Urine, but he consistently refused her. Urine then thought to himself that it could no longer be helped. When they met, Elia declared she would definitely break the engagement this time. But upon seeing him, she was too shocked to speak. After a moment, she suddenly asked what he had said. She remarked that it had been a while. Then she looked at him and said there was no way this was real. She had heard a rumor from Ting that he had lost weight but had dismissed it as false. She noted it had not even been 2 months and asked how he had changed so much. Urine replied it was because he had worked hard. Elia was surprised and asked if he truly worked hard. Urine said that after she had beaten him up, he had done a lot of thinking and decided to change. She asked if he was trying to start a fight for revenge. Urine said no and suddenly dropped to his knees. Elia was shocked. Urine expressed his gratitude to her, saying that thanks to her, he was able to come to his senses. He apologized sincerely for what had happened back then and said if she wanted to break off the engagement because of that incident, he would accept it. Aaliyah asked in shock who he really was. Urine replied that he was the former scoundrel, Urine Rocks, and that he was truly sorry. Aaliyah was very surprised, saying his name slowly, still in shock. But internally, Urine thought that it had not been his fault. It was the fault of the body's original owner. The reason he was asking for forgiveness so earnestly was because he knew Aaliyah possessed a trait called Kingdoms Toppling Beauties for the Queen. Because of this trait, she disliked him. But Urine knew Aaliyah was not just a simple hero. She had the Schwarten trait. When combined with her own trait, she became increasingly stronger. Later on, she would even defeat a main villain and be called the fallen protagonist. Her Sword Queen trait made that possible. That was why Urine thought that even if they ended the engagement, it was better to repair their relationship and make her an ally. Aaliyah then told him to get up. She asked if he was serious. Urine said yes and promised again. Aaliyah said no, he had to swear it. She released her aura. Urine thought in shock that she was pressuring him with such a suffocating aura. He felt he had seen this scene somewhere before. She told him that from now on, he would not live as he did before. If he broke that oath, she would beat him to death herself. Urine realized this was the line Aaliyah had once said to the protagonist, not him. He then thought he could no longer breathe. He said the name of his technique, 10,000 Poisons Magnet Auto Divine Arts, and stood up within Aaliyah's pressure. She was shocked and asked how he had resisted her aura. Urine said yes, he swore it. She was impressed but did not show it. She then walked away saying, "Fine, I will be watching." She was impressed but did not let Urine know. She said if he made even one more mistake, the engagement would be unconditionally off. Urine thought to himself that she was not breaking it off now. Then she went to see Marquis. Marquis asked her if she had met Urine. She said yes. Marquis asked if she had made her decision. She said yes, the engagement would not be broken. Marquis was shocked and asked for her reason. She said she did not really understand it either. Her father always told her that people could not be fixed, but a rumor had spread that Urine had changed, so she was curious. She wondered if he had returned to the weak but kind Urine from childhood. But he had not. He had become a completely different person. That was why she wanted to try trusting him. Marquis said he understood. She then added that if Urine ever reverted to being a scoundrel, she would beat him to death with her own hands. Marquis said, "Ah, that was expected of the great heroine." Marquis was terrified, sweating. He asked her to take good care of Urine. She stood up and said she would be on her way. Marquis told her she should stay for a few days. She said no, because she had told her father she was coming to break off the engagement. Marquis said she should at least see Urine before leaving. She said no, it was all right. Urine was training and she would not disturb him. Marquis said all right and asked her to give his regards to her father. That evening, Urine came to Marquis. He asked if Marquis had called for him. Marquis said yes, but when he turned around, he asked who Urine was. Urine was confused. Marquis laughed and said it was a joke. He said Urine had really worked hard. Urine said yes. Marquis asked if Urine knew why he had been called. Urine asked if it was to begin his nightly training. Marquis said that was right. He said Urine had become quick-witted too. It was time for Urine to learn the swordsmanship of the Rocks family. But Urine said he had something to tell Marquis about that matter. Marquis asked what. After hearing it, Marquis was shocked. Urine had said he wanted to learn throwing arts instead of swordsmanship. Marquis shouted, "What?" He said that was not allowed. He said throwing arts were a cheap trick used by thieves. With a crude skill like dagger throwing, Urine could not even get through a knight's armor. Such a thing could not even pierce the scales of a low-class monster like a boar. He asked Urine if he understood. Urine then said they should make a bet. Marquis asked what kind of bet. Urine said it would be on whether he could catch a bird with a dagger. He said if Marquis was so confident, they should make a bet. Urine was very confident in himself. Upon hearing about the bet, Marquis became angry. He shouted that such useless stubbornness would never work. A warrior's blade needed aura to destroy a boar's scales. He said even if Urine practiced throwing arts for 100 years, he would never break a boar's scales. Urine calmly replied that, in that case, Marquis would win unconditionally. That was why Marquis should just agree to the bet. Marquis was surprised. He called Urine reckless. He said he would use this chance to break Urine's stubbornness for good. He then asked what Urine would wager on the bet. Urine said if he caught a boar with a dagger, he would handle his own training from then on. If he failed, he would follow Marquis's will. Marquis agreed. That night, Urine sat alone in his room. He said it was fortunate that Aaron had not reported his training to anyone. He thought about the practical test coming tomorrow. He wondered how many tries it would take to pierce the boar's scales. He admitted he was curious himself. Just in case, he decided to eat some of the hidden poison herbs. He wanted to raise his 10,000 poison magnetic divine arts to the 3rd tier. He turned around and found Erin coming into the room. She said she had come to deliver a message for Marquis. She told him the time for tomorrow was 12. The place was Training Hall 1. She asked if he knew the details of the bet. Urine asked if she knew. She said it was not just her. The entire Marquis estate knew about it. She explained that the estate was roaring with laughter. Urine asked why they were laughing. Aaron said everyone was saying the young master would wet his pants after seeing a boar. They joked that he would run away in fear. She explained that everyone was having fun talking about it because the young master was still seen as the public enemy. Urine asked if those people would come to watch tomorrow. Aaron said yes. Marquis had not forbidden it, so the training hall would be packed. Urine said, "Really? So it has become a spectacle." He then asked what she thought about it. Aaron smiled and said, "Tomorrow will probably be the young master's day." Urine was surprised. She added a firm no to his doubts. The next morning, Urine woke up early. He checked his body and found his 10,000 poison magnetic divine arts had indeed reached the 3rd star. He felt stronger. At the training hall, the crowd was already waiting. Everyone was laughing loudly. They whispered jokes about the young master. Urine stood in the middle of the hall, surrounded by noise. He looked around and thought the place was really packed. Marquis stood in front and asked if Urine admitted there were quite a lot of people. Marquis explained that he had only meant to tell the magician, but the news had spread everywhere. He warned Urine not to embarrass himself. Urine was startled and too nervous to answer. The magician stepped forward. He announced the start of the test. He said he would use short-range summoning magic. Urine thought how amazing it was to see magic in person. Then he saw it happen. An animal appeared in front of him. It was a Borg. Urine was stunned. He thought what was even more amazing was that this was a monster he had created as an author in another life. He remembered that he had made it up while eating rockfish sashimi at a restaurant. He had not thought of any other monster, so he had written about the Borg. Now it stood here in front of him in real life. It was 150 centimeters tall. It had arms and legs. It looked strange. It might even be a little cute. The crowd gasped. A mother quickly covered her child's eyes. She said that kind of thing should not be here. The hall filled with fear. Urine muttered to himself that this was hideous. The Borg suddenly roared and attacked him. Its heavy body rushed forward. The crowd screamed, but Urine calmly dodged. He moved swiftly to the side and appeared behind the monster. Marquis shouted that it was not over yet. The Borg quickly turned around. It charged at him again without hesitation. Urine laughed in his mind. He thought the monster was not that fast. He said to himself that he should first test how thick the scales were. He pulled out his dagger. At that moment, his eyes widened. A glowing mark appeared. It was a crosshair that locked on to the monster's weak spot. Urine thought it was a new target right in front of his eyes. He decided to give it a try. He aimed carefully at the weak spot. He threw the dagger. The blade flew straight into the mark. It pierced the weak spot with ease. The Borg let out a cry and collapsed. It died instantly. Urine blinked in surprise. He thought it had died in one hit. The entire hall went silent. People screamed in shock. Their mouths hung open. Even Marquis froze, his mouth wide like the opening of a cave. Then the crowd erupted in cheers. They shouted that the young master had done it. They cheered that he had caught the Borg. They said it was so cool. They shouted his name with excitement. Urin stood calmly. Marcus finally snapped back. He shouted at Urin, asking how on earth he had done that. Urin said simply that he had aimed well and hit the mark. Marcus shook his head. He said he could not accept this. He said a Borg dying from a single dagger made no sense. Urin smirked. He said, surely the great Marquis Rox would not go back on his word. A maid stepped forward. She pointed at the Borg's arm. She said the dagger had struck a place with no scales. She explained that the young master's dagger had lodged precisely there. Marcus shouted it was pure luck. Urin said, luck or not, a bet was still a bet. Marcus tried to calm him. He said they should just do it one more time. Urin crossed his arms. He said Marcus was being unreasonable. Marcus then raised the stakes. He said he would add another promise to the wager. Urin was surprised. Marcus said if Urin won again, then whatever he asked for, Marcus would grant him one wish. But if he lost, he would follow Marques's plan and learn swordsmanship. Urin turned around with a smile. He said, a wish, really? Marcus nodded firmly. He then added a twist. He said, this time Urin's opponent would not be a Borg. The opponent would be a knight.